So as people are coming in, you can see the quote. It, I think, connects nicely with the theme of our national meeting and also our keynote speaker, Stephanie Autumn, who's here with us today. Her presentation. I think we're all still thinking about it. I know we have one of the new working groups, the multi-tiered systems of support, social emotional learning working group has been talking about the politicization of social emotional learning and issues with that. And so we were talking about framing the message of what SEL is. And part of framing that message can be how you tell a story so that you're not telling people they're wrong. It's bringing them into the story with you, bringing them into the why with you. So that's been a nice conversation. Certainly, we're interested in hearing from you how you view storytelling in the time since the national meeting. So if anyone wants to add that to the chat, we would be really interested in hearing that. And Stephanie would love to see that because she loves information about what you do with her work, with what she presents. So I will be reintroducing Stephanie to you in a moment. But in the meantime, we have some, I guess, bittersweet might be the way to talk about it, news, and that Peg Sullivan is retiring. And if you have worked with Peg Sullivan, if you know Peg Sullivan, you understand what a loss that is to SIG Network. She has been a very important collaborator, a great thinker, a generous, I'm out of words, but she's always generously sharing her knowledge, what she hears, and always humble about it. You know, it's really about improving results for children / youth with disabilities that she's focused on. And so we have a little something to share. And then there are a few people, Peg, who want to speak about the difference you've made in their work and their lives. So Kelsey, do you want to share your screen? All right. So we have the SPDIG Award for Career Contribution to Margaret Peg Sullivan, given with sincere appreciation for your contributions to the SPDIG community and SIG Network. And John, do you want to say a few words?
Yeah, I do. Like you said, this is a bittersweet for us. It's really sweet thinking back about all the ways that Peg has informed the work that the SPDIG does. I guess what I should say is that what the SIG Network does, and by virtue of that, what all the SPDIGs do. I was looking through emails related to Peg, and as I was doing that recently, I thought about, I've had limited opportunity to get to know Peg face to face, although whenever I think about Peg, I think about kind of her unassuming smile, right? Every time I see her, I think of her smile, and that smile to me conveys understanding and caring and listening. And all three of those things really are what characterize when I think about the whole group of the SIG Network members. Passion to the work, really. And so, Peg, I've gotten to know you also through emails. And when I look through those emails, it's just, again, this kind of humble, unassuming contributions to all of us in the SIG Network. So, like Jennifer said, I'm really, it's sweet to think back and think of all that you've contributed to us and have helped the full SIG Network. But it's also bitter to be thinking that you'll no longer be doing that for us. But I'm happy for you. Congratulations.
Thanks, John. And we also had a few colleagues who we wanted to give time to talk about you. So we have Lucinda Kelly, Shadarupa Potter, and Laura Bray.
I'm not sure who wants to go first. I'm happy to talk.
Perfect.
So I don't know if any of you watch The Crown, if you're Crown followers, but I've said a couple times, I feel a little bit the SPDIG equivalent of how Elizabeth must have felt, when she found out she was going to ascend the throne and have to take on all that responsibility and not really feeling quite ready for it. Peg has told several people, she said, you know, I'm retiring and Lucinda's replacing me. And I keep correcting them and saying, no, I'm following her. And I'm going to try to do that with as much grace and humility and passion as she has given to this job. I was a SPDIG recipient at first in a district. And when I met Peg, I was under a tremendous amount of pressure and trying to do two positions. I was leaving one and going to another one, and they both were incredibly demanding, and they didn't have a replacement for me at the one I was leaving. And it was just really a hard time in my life. And she called me up and she said, listen, we have this grant availability for your district. We really think it would help you. And I said, I'm going to be honest with you. I read it. I think it looks wonderful, but there's just no way. I don't have enough hours in the day, right? I can't humanly possibly get this done. And she said, well, what if I come and meet with you and help you? That was her response. Not, oh, well, she doesn't really want to do it, or like she saw the best in me, right? She immediately realized I was being honest with her, saw the best in me, and made an 1.5-hour trip in her off time to sit down with me and help me to get it all done. And I can tell you, as a result of that direct action, of that caring just that much, I can tell you the names of students who graduated that would not have. Like, that is what happened. And they have names and faces to me. And I get a little emotional if I talk about this too long. But she has been a tremendous mentor to me and to so many other people. She mentors all the time, and she meets you where you are. And the people who have benefited from that are just countless. So I just really feel the responsibility of following her and wanting to do a good job for her and to continue the great body of work that she's done here. So thank you for this opportunity, and thank you for recognizing her.
Yeah, thank you, Lucinda. And I look forward to working with you as the project director of Florida's work. You have a fantastic team. All right. And how about Laura Bry next?
Great. Yes, Lucinda hit the nail right on the head. And I have to say, I started January 4th last year. And Shadarupa Porter, who previously had my position, she's on the call today too. And one of the first things she told me was, I'm going to connect you to somebody who is just a wonderful person who will help mentor you in this new role. And she connected me to Peg. And the next thing you know, Peg and I met. And we set up monthly meetings, and every month Peg gave so much of her time, insight, wisdom to guide me through, talk about challenges I was facing. And I appreciate so much the time and energy and just meeting me where I was at that moment. And she would just listen sometimes, which is what I needed. And then also she kind of came in with the resources right when I needed them and kind of directed me and guided me in this position, which is a tricky, different role to be in. And I appreciate you, Peg, so much. And I wish we had longer to be working together. I'm so excited to be connected to Lucinda. And even as she's leaving, she was forming the relationship between Lucinda and I to continue to work and collaborate together. Because Peg, I know you value your colleagues, the collaboration, and it's about the kids and about improving outcomes. And that was always the site for you. And I feel like in all the work, it's about the kids. And so I thank you, and I'm still going to reach out to you. I'm still going to be, and when I head to Florida, I might stop by somehow. And the funny thing is, we've never met in person. Everything has been virtual, and everyone says like it's hard sometimes to form a relationship, but we've been able to. And I feel like I know you like a colleague in PA. So I just thank you, Peg, so much.
So glad. And Shadarupa, it's so nice to see you again. Shadarupa, just a little background. Shadarupa received the Leadership Award from the SIG Network when she was with us, and now has gone on to other work in Pennsylvania, but it's good to see you. So welcome, Shadarupa.
Thank you, Jennifer, for inviting me back. When Laura told me that Peg was retiring, I was like, oh, but I'm then I was like, oh, but good for her. So good for you, Peg. Congratulations on retiring. You and I, we are, and I think a couple of other people have been around since SPDIG was called the State Improvement Grant, SIG. I know, Jennifer, you were there too, and so was John there. But like Lucinda said, not only has she been a mentor and guide in Florida, she has been a mentor and guide across the country, offering help and support to other states, collaborating, sharing materials. When we were just starting the SPDIG, we currently have some of the concepts or things that Peg had been working on in Florida before that. And then I reached out to her, says, here are the materials, take them. Do what you want with them there. So that kind of sharing, that kind of openness, and that's something with the SPDIG community that I have really appreciated over the years. So thank you, Peg, for all you've done, not only for the kids with specific names that you can see, Lucinda in Florida, but all the unnamed kids across the country that have been impacted by your work. So thank you very much.
Oh, it's fantastic. So yeah, Peg embodies what we want for the SIG network. And I'm sure you could hear some themes across our three friends who spoke. And one of those themes is mentorship and how much it makes a difference. And in this case, leading to kids graduating who wouldn't have graduated otherwise, which is the ultimate. So Peg, do you want to say anything? It's up to you.
I thank you very much. I'm really honored by having been able to be a part of this group. I have learned so much from each and every one of you. And yeah, I am big into, it's all about the relationships. I believe that all change happens through relationships, and we all need help from one another. You guys have been there for me multiple times, and I think he's here, but I don't see him on my screen. Steve Goodman is another prime example of that. But yeah, I've enjoyed so much working with all of you, and thank you. And I'm off to ride my bicycle all the time. I'm so excited about not having to cram bike riding in before I go to work.
Well, that sounds fantastic. I love riding bikes. Well, thanks everyone. That was wonderful. And it really dovetails nicely with what Stephanie Autumn has shared with us, especially. She spoke at the national meeting about everything is about relationship. It's all about relationship. I think the rest of the world is starting, maybe not the rest of the world, some of the world is starting to key into that, but Peg already understood it. Stephanie understood it. And now we get to think a little bit more about what that means for our work in schools. And so I know not everyone was at the national meeting who's on here, but many people were. So I don't want to go too far backwards into Stephanie's bio, but I do want to say how she's been so generous with her time. Also, she is doing this for us gratis, and she wants to continue to work with us, which makes my heart happy to know that this isn't a two and done in this case. But she's going to continue to work with us and to figure this out. And we are also, going to support her work however we can. Right now, she is mainly in the juvenile justice area, but has worked in education, has worked in various areas from the local level all the way to the international level and working on human rights. And so there's nothing she hasn't put her soul into, I think, from what I've heard, to improve results for children, youth, and adults who are Indigenous. And I'm hoping she's going to make a difference for our work. We're going to talk a little bit about learning laboratories and how the people you work with, the sites you work with, the families you work with can be part of that. And you're going to have an opportunity to have breakout sessions and discuss with the smaller group what it means for you today. But with that, I will turn it over to Stephanie.
Thank you, Jennifer, for the lovely introduction. And Peg, I don't know you, but congratulations. Have fun. I hope the rest of the wishes you have for your life come true. And thank you, everyone who is part of this convening today. And Kelsey, we'll move into the Metimeter questions. Kelsey, do you want to set us up?
She-
Sure. So we have 2 questions today. I'm going to paste a link in the chat, and this will appear as a word cloud. So you'll be able to contribute to the word cloud here as you enter and click on the link.
Thank you everyone for these positive words. I love doing this. And thank you, Jennifer, for suggesting that we enter the conversation with some self-reflection. I find that when I'm in a learning environment, in a sharing environment, that it really helps me to like center in a holistic way my spirit with my mind, with my intentions. So, you know, being able to just step back for a moment and remind ourselves, because it's not all it's not all lovely at all times. We know that it comes with a lot of hard work, stress, prayers, frustration. So thank you everyone for sharing your envisioning for those that you serve, and for those that you haven't met yet that you may serve in the future. I was working with a young Mohawk woman yesterday, and she made a statement that I've been carrying. So it really resonates with this question. She shared with me that whenever she does the presentation, she always starts with, I just want you to know that I'm working for the youngest person in the room. And that made me sit up, become alive. And it was such a good reminder to me in terms of how I work and how I lead. So I think, Kelsey, we could go to the next question. So in the duality of this work, we know that we're serving young people, families, and communities, as well as our colleague and staff that also serve. So the question is, I envision a working environment for school staff that promotes and values Thank you, everyone, for your sharing and the intention of these good words. A lot of wisdom in the vision for young people and the vision for school environments for our colleagues and other individuals that are serving our young people. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for sharing. Kelsey, I believe that you've put a link in the chat box because it was the hope as we move into our breakout rooms that as we have some reflections that we're hoping everyone will engage in. And sometimes it's always nice to be able to look at collective vision to help us really formulate innovation and new ideas in terms as individuals and as a collective. So thank you. Kelsey, can you pull up our PowerPoint? So today we're doing some exploration, and I'm sure that many of you have know about learning labs, have even participated in a learning lab. There are many, many, many learning lab models and frameworks from education to IT to health and human services, you name it. Learning labs have really been created to support a lot of different systems, programs, and to bring people together in a new way. And the learning lab model I'm going to show you is kind of a hybrid. It's a little bit based on the educational model, just a little. And it's really, I learned on a social justice learning lab model that I tweaked a little bit. And today we're just exploring. We're exploring that if there's anything about this that resonates for you and might be applicable, because for me, when I am learning in terms of maybe how to bring people into the conversation in a more expansive way, I'm just always saying, okay, how does this feel for me? How would it feel for my team? You know, it's not always to community or to parents and caregivers. It's really experiencing it myself, being reflective, what worked, what didn't work, and then taking it and maybe, you know, reshaping it a bit to best fit however you might utilize learning labs. I utilize learning lab across the board because I do a lot of work in restorative practices in community schools, prisons, but I also utilize learning labs. The TA center I work for now, we work for about 80 tribes. So we utilize learning labs with tribal youth programs that are just moving in to strategic planning to really get them out of their head and to really guide them towards their vision and looking at things through a strength-based process, like being able to move forward and not being stuck on what didn't work in the past. Next slide, please. So as I shared previously, this is just me being with you today, not really teaching all the ins and outs of learning labs, just being able to provide an experience. In terms of moving forward with learning labs, and if you decide you would like to learn more, the end of the road or the benefits is that what I've learned is it really helps people who are experts in their field, um, really have strong views about evidence-based or how things should be done. It's a way to kind of get them to relax a little bit and consider other options and learn from their colleagues that may not have the same experience in their profession, but may have that experience on the ground, working with families, working with communities, you know, working in a way with those most impacted with educational disparities, justice disparities, health disparities. And it is a way for me, as someone that I feel I have a responsibility to create environments for learning with my teams that I lead. It's a way that really helps people let go and pay attention and not multitask when we're trying to work together, because you really have to be engaged. So, and for me, when I'm in a learning lab, when I learned, I felt a sense of freedom. It helped me to think about innovation. It helped me to be able to be creative in ways that I can't. You know, all of you, I think, are tied to grants like I am, and I'm always about deliverables. I'm always about outcomes. I'm always about data. I'm always about what I have to do. And I don't get to spend as much time being creative. And I feel like learning lab conversations, when they happen in a consistent way, really, again, provide people freedom to be creative and how to approach, whether it's planning a curriculum or a program or writing a brief. It's really a way to come at it in a different way that I enjoy. And most importantly, what I enjoy, because I work in communities where a lot of people are PhDs and some people are in the room with just a GED. So for me, Learning Labs allows for honoring where people are, honoring the type of experience and education they walk with. And it really promotes a sense of equity, that it's not about the degrees you have or don't have. It's really about what you're bringing with you to share and to contribute to get where the group wants to go. Next slide, please. So I don't know about all of you, because I'm new to your group and you all may have this figured out. And like I shared with Jennifer, I'm so excited to get to learn from you whenever I am part of your conversations. So please know that I put this information together because, I mean, it's just based on what I know, but I don't know where all of you are because I don't work with you. I have not been in your presence. But when groups of individuals that I work with want to move forward with a Learning Lab, whether it's a grantee like a program director and their partners, or if it's with teachers that really want to move forward and learn more about the Learning Lab models and employ in their classrooms, or with my staff that I'm training and mentoring to use within other programs, is that it opens up venues and conversations and creates a sense of safety. Because sometimes I know as professionals, when we come to these working groups, these meetings, directors meeting, coordinators meeting, teachers meetings, we're always thinking too much. We're in our head, right? We're preparing for what we're going to say. What I love about Learning Labs is that it really promotes a sense of safety where we're really willing to take risks and we're hungry for innovation. We're like, I love that idea. I was in a mini Learning Lab this morning, of all things, about performance measures. But the way that they were presenting it, I was like, oh, we should do an online learning event now because I'm excited. So again, it just frees us up to look at where we're going, whether it's within our grant, whether it's working in community, whether it's looking at specific programs in schools in a different way. And again, Learning Labs, because of the nature of the conversation, for me, the tenets of a Learning Lab, I always feel my role in a Learning Lab is to really promote shared voice. Because sometimes, you know, when we're working in clusters, working in groups, we always know who's going to really step forward and have a lot to share. And we learn those that are really more introspective. And what I love about Learning Labs is that it creates that environment where people, there's a lot of mutual sharing in ways that I don't see like happening it with online learning events or how we do our professional training. So again, these are usually the goals of a learning lab, and every learning lab is different. It's like restorative practices. When you're utilizing restorative practices with families and communities, our family group decision making, it's going to look different in every scenario. So I just pulled goals out for this discussion today, not knowing how you are or how it looks like, feels like when you all work together. Next slide, please. So in a learning lab, it's kind of it shifts the whole paradigm in terms of how we normally learn as professionals. But from the little that I know about your group is that you do something very similar to Learning Lab. You do a lot of reflection, but unfortunately, a lot of folks I work with across systems, Indigenous and non-Indigenous, they're really tethered to a very Western model of learning, where there's an expert in the room and there's people who listen and then they walk away and then they measure what people learn. In a learning lab, there's just little seeds planted, that in the seeds that are planted, that there is some truth, that there is some practice that resonates with those that are in the learning lab. So for today's learning lab, because part of our conversation, and Jennifer, you'll notice that because we really wanted to explore how we move closer to strength-based, it's the implant, strength-based decision-making, developing our own individually and collectively within our own teams, within your own schools, however it would play out, or if we're just utilizing a learning lab so that we can be better individually when we work with teams. What is our strength-based process in terms of trying to build, trying to solve, trying to look at things from an asset-based lens and not a deficit lens? So 2 seeds that I know you're all very familiar with. Part of what we know, and most communities will agree with, is that strength-based processes, can trace its roots to restorative practices, to social justice, to social services, and that this approach, it's just like we're always looking. I used to have a visual that that used to say strength-based only on one lens, no deficits allowed, is that no matter what the situation is, that we're always seeing that one strength. No matter where I'm working, I know that no matter what the situation is or what I've been asked to come into a school or a community to help facilitate, I always know that my starting place is not the issue. I don't start with the issue. I don't start with the problem. I don't start with what's wrong. I am always doing my digging in the ground and looking at what is right, what is well, what is working, what can be built on. And part of the other strength-based approach when we're doing strength-based problem solving processes is that we're integrating that thought of it's just not about academics. It's exactly what you all are talking about. It's about that emotional needs, that emotional intelligence. It's about the physical well-being. It's about do we have environments where our littles, middles, and biggies are feeling safe, where they have a voice, where parents and caregivers, that they know when they walk in that door that it will be a positive experience. It's not just about when things go wrong. Do your colleagues have a place in a process where they can really facilitate and share what they need as human beings? I saw that, in our word cloud. One of it was the envisioning of that teachers are human beings. So again, really pairing strengths with the physical, mental, spiritual, emotional needs of all of those we work with and serve. Next slide, please. So again, I'm sharing strength-based practices pieces with you, and I know that you're all familiar with them, you practice them, but for the sake of being able to explore and experience a learning lab, as I know learning labs, I just pulled out some tenets of strength-based practices in communities and in schools. So, the first one being youth, families, and community voice are core in informing and identifying goals and outcomes to be achieved. I wish this was, we saw more of this in the schools that I currently work in around restorative practices. I see this much of it. I see this being an afterthought. So again, part of what we know in strength-based practices, strength-based decision-making, that we always have to be holding ourselves accountable to where is this voice? Where is the voice of those that we serve? And then again, in terms of being able to, when we are encountering challenges, when we're encountering resistance, I'm a human being like all of you. I'm just not always restorative. I could have a trigger. We all have our triggers. I still get triggered. So what I love about this process, that with restorative process and being in restorative practices and social justice learning labs around serving community, is that I get to practice, how do I push away when there is a trigger? When there is a trigger emotionally, academically, in terms of my profession, any type of trigger, is that I can push away and say, pause. I need to pause. And I write down, what was I feeling? What was I feeling? And then I stop, and then I put myself in the place of the person or persons that might have spoke the words that caused a trigger. And I try to see the conversation from their lens. And when I do that practice, it gives me a different perspective that I need to not agree with, but that I can see, that I'm not just steeped in how I see the situation. And then I go one step further and I say, what good can I pull from that view that is triggering me? Is there a strength there I need to look at? Is there something in that trigger that I can learn from? What is it? And part of this process is saying, no matter what the situation is, if we've been triggered emotionally, professionally, and working with young people and working with families and working with communities, stopping and finding one thing that is working and saying, okay, I'm going to have to set aside what I was thinking and feeling and then build upon this one thing. So that's part of what I've learned, and it doesn't happen overnight. I am still practicing it, and I'll be practicing it probably until I can't remember that I need to practice it. So again, like with everything we do when we're serving, it's just a continual practice. It's like with all of your work, for those of you that are working in restorative practices, SCL, other domains of approaches with families and young people, it's that constant practice. So this is no different in terms of being able to see whatever we're faced with, that there is a strength in there, no matter how it resonates or doesn't resonate. And as I was thinking about our conversation this morning, I think the hardest part when we get in these situations of challenges, barriers, and resistance is we tend to personalize it. I do. It becomes very personal. So what I am learning, I am just learning this now, that I can empower myself and others if I detach from it. And if I say, I may not have control over the outcome of the situation, but in this moment of time, I can contribute in a different way. And I can let go of what that outcome is. And that's very, very, very hard to do. I can influence. I may not have control, but I can influence with my presence. I can influence with how I approach challenges, resistance, barriers, whatever it is, and how the dynamics of even working with the team. I really utilize this when I'm working with my teams because of the diverse personalities, the diverse backgrounds. You're going to see this pop up a lot. And I have to really utilize this to really be a clear glass of water to guide and really help people, individuals, colleagues with diverse backgrounds and experience to value each other. So that's another seed of planting. And then viewing the environment as a rich resource, which, you know, I'm not familiar with the schools, our communities that you work with, but please know I work in prisons a lot, and I utilize viewing the community that I'm working in, even a prison, as a resource. What am I learning there? What is my interaction with human beings? What stories are being told that will help me serve better? What connections are being made in terms of those that I'm serving in prison that I can, you know, try to build bridges outside of the prisons? So again, no matter what we have or don't have in our professional environments, within our schools, within our communities, this strength-based practice that I was mentored into is that step one is I have to say, whatever ground I'm standing in, wherever I'm at, there are resources. And I just need to stop and pay attention and do my due diligence to find those and identify those, embrace them and lift them up and bring them into the work. And that's my starting point, not what's wrong. And the last one, I utilize this on a personal level, even though I learned about it on a professional level, and I loved it. I fell in love with this, is that our relationships across every domain we are human beings in is really, we want to land is that they're hope orientated. You know, we know the power of hope. We know what our littles, middles, biggies, parents, caregivers, all of us, you know, we know we thrive on hope. And we will be carrying that forward the rest of our life. So really kind of exploring what hope-orientated relationships look like. What do they feel like? What do they sound like? What can they be? How do I influence them? How do I guide them? How can they change outcomes for our littles, middles, biggies, families, caregivers, communities? So again, these are just seeds that I'm sharing. Take whatever resonates with you. And I always say, what doesn't resonate, just leave it on the side of the road. It will grow in a new way somewhere. Next slide. So that was a lot of, well, it felt like a lot of information, but it was all information that I know that you have heard, seen, practiced in the work that you do within your schools, within your communities, within your districts. So we're going to be moving into, we're calling it, I was trying to use your language and normally we just call these like learning rooms, or, you know, I sometimes don't, I walk away from the laboratory language, but we're going to be moving into breakout rooms, and Jennifer and Kelsey have organized those. And each breakout room, if I could ask that each breakout room have a facilitator and a note taker. You're all used to doing that. What's going to be a little different about your learning lab is that you're going to come into it, and once you have a come to consensus on the facilitator and the note taker, is you're going to move into silent reflection for 5 minutes on these questions. And I don't know, Kelsey and Jennifer, we're going to be able to bring these into their breakout rooms, if they'll be, how they'll have access to be able to reflect on these.
I put them in the chat. Kelsey, will they be able to see them in the chat in the breakouts?
Yes, yeah, they'll be able
Okay.
to see them in the chat. And I'll also repost that Menti link to keep it at the bottom in case you'd
Okay.
like to reference that.
Okay, so you're just going to be doing 5 minutes of reflection, wonderings within yourself. And then your facilitator will be guiding you through sharing, just sharing and not being stuck in your brain, just like organic sharing. There's no right or wrong. It's just reflections. It's just sharing. It's just coming at things in a different way. And it's like taking risks. It's just like whatever is in your heart and mind, you know, utilizing it with our values and sharing. Because after the sharing, you kind of step back. And I always ask after a learning lab, like for 4 days to like have a notepad and just to be writing down thoughts that come to you about the sharing, the ideas. You know, there's going to be some things that you're going to really kind of say, oh, you know, that idea might work within my school, within my district. So again, you know, really being in the room, listening, writing things down, and then being with it for the next 4 days and seeing what you can make of it. Next slide, please. So I was talking before I called the slide up. I often do that. So the facilitator, the role, once we have a volunteer, you'll be sharing and helping the group take those brave steps. The note taker, you're not doing verbatim, you're just doing key ideas, some themes that are showing up. And then when you return to the room, you know, if each group can just have 1 or 2 sharings in terms of some key ideas and themes from the exploration discussion. So that's my little model that I wanted to share with you today. And I thank you for allowing me to be with you. And Jennifer and Kelsey, I look forward to our conversation next week to see how we move forward or don't move forward, because I know we have another topic that we want to explore.
We have many topics.
Okay. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Stephanie. And does anyone have questions about what will happen in the breakout groups? You can put them in the chat or use your microphone. It's up to you. All right, and Kelsey will start to break you off. You're going to be groups of 5. Please do choose your facilitator and your note taker. And then when we come back together at 4:15, we'll be having everyone share out. So we'll be able to learn from folks then. Excellent. So for me, it was so nice to have Stephanie back. I hope everyone was as excited as I was. We had such great feedback in our survey, our post-event survey, people wanting more, and she was willing to work with us and actually interested in working with us. So it's seemingly a really good relationship. Just a little background, you know, her last few slides from the keynote, she didn't really get into too much depth on, right? There was, you know, a limited amount of time. And so I wanted to start pulling apart those pieces of it, and Learning Labs was one of them. I think the bigger idea behind it is we, not SIG Network, we education need a different way of perspective taking, right? A different, and she kind of led with that. How do we develop these relationships? How do we develop a different perspective to help us enter into relationships so that we can kind of feel something from someone else's, you know, it's like walking a mile in their shoes, right? And so, and also as we think about family engagement, I think we're always trying to grow that in SIG Network and the SPDIG projects. We had their parent participatory evaluation presentation last May that people loved and wanted to get more into. And so this was another way of starting to think about what does that mean for our SPDIG work? And so now I would love to hear from each of the groups. If we could just have, I think it was the note taker, Stephanie talked about sharing, but it could be anyone from your group. Go ahead and speak up and we can start.
We'd like to go ahead and go first because we had great discussion.
Good.
Corinne did a great job of taking notes. Melissa's going to, we put it in the chat, but it is interesting. And I'll be the first one. I said, I've never been in a learning lab, Maybe it's never been called a learning lab, but it's interesting. So I'm going to turn it over to Melissa, who will provide our conversation.
Thank you so much. So as Earl said, our notes are in the chat for you to peruse, and in case I leaved out some important details. But one thing that was an overarching theme that we had a lot of conversation around, and I think maybe because of our backgrounds in school administration and classroom and coaching, is that the kids are our best assets. So really working to provide them and create opportunities to give kids a voice. So some of the ways that that has happened in our careers is having representation on the school board by a student who acts as a liaison, who is there to listen and give feedback, not a voting member, but to really give that representation of student. And of course, you know, working with your student council and those kinds of aspects in our schools, and really looking at how we can get that representation from students to build that safe space, to have students feel as if they have a voice and be engaged in that decision making. Both Corinne and I have agencies within our states who facilitate parent involvement and family engagement. And so we, in North Carolina, have an agency who helps us with that family engagement piece, to the level our IHEs that we work with. Parents go into pre-service teacher classrooms and talk to those pre-service teacher candidates, and give them that parent perspective of having a student with disabilities and how it feels to sit in an IEP meeting with folks who sometimes they feel intimidated by, and how to know the parent side of those meetings and that kind of thing.
Yep.
So our big themes, though, were to always listen, to give opportunity for folks to have a voice at whatever level, student, parent, community, and to always help folks feel as if they're being validated and engaged.
Yeah, great. I'm so glad you brought that up, Melissa, and group about parents coming in. So with educator preparation programs, I have a pretty firm belief that that is the best time to have scholars, soon to be educators, working with families. Because you know, if that's how they start, it's like, oh, this is what I do. I work with families. I collaborate with families. We're partners in this work. I think in service it can work, but it's not optimal, right? You want to give them those experiences. And I've also heard of programs where the scholars actually go and stay with the family for a day or more, and walk with the family in their lives. And what a difference that makes the rest of their career. That they'll never forget that. And that will always be, again, that perspective that they're able to take. I think the other thing I was thinking about when you were talking about student voice is how important student-led IEPs are. Yes. And should really be happening everywhere. That's, you know, it's maybe technically there are a few things you have to think about, but it's not too difficult or expensive or any the above. And it's a great way to get voice. So thank you for giving us so much to think about. And I love the notes. Thank you. All right, next group who'd like to share.
I'll go, Jennifer. I put the notes in the chat as well. The thing that we talked through each of the three, the one that I have to say I really loved was the conversation about going where parents are at versus bringing them to the school. Lucinda stated that they met at firehouses or coffee shops. So everybody's more on an equal footing versus bringing the parents to our environment where there's already a power kind of dynamic in that environment. That's not what she said. That was my interpretation. Also just having the conversation around valuing diverse voices and how we acknowledge everyone's expertise and experience that they bring to the table. So that y'all can read our notes, but those
Yeah,
were the
great.
big takeaways.
Oh, good, Shannon. And just a little preview, Shannon will be presenting with a team from Idaho next month. We're going to continue the conversation about engaging communities and hear from 3 different projects who are doing that in different ways to give you some lived examples or application to it.
Jennifer, I had a quote I wanted to share about
Oh,
hope
sure.
that really goes with that third question really quick. I just happened to read it like today or yesterday. I can't remember, but hope is like a road in the country. There was never a road, but when many people walk on it, the road comes into existence. And that just really spoke to me about we just have to keep trying, right? And we have to get other people to believe and be willing to walk that road of hope. So I thought that was pretty inspirational.
Right. I tried to capture it. Walked on it, came to existence. Something like this. There you go. For those of us who are visual. Thank you so much. All right. Next group.
I'd be willing to go next. I will share our notes too. I'm having a little bit of issue copying them over there, but just building off of what everyone else was saying, we one of the things that we spent some time talking about was focus groups and the importance of who you're including, the power dynamics that are already kind of within groups, thinking through not only the information you gather, but how you're going to disseminate it back and check to make sure that the information you're collecting resonates with the people who are in that group, that we're, that sharing back with them, having them reflect and making sure you really captured what the main takeaways were. Something else we talked about was a challenge that we had with our SPDIG and connecting with some families in our schools was we had a team member, a family team member designated to be a family member on our school teams. And some schools were really involving that family member and that family member was then able to share out, but others struggled with it a little bit more. So we reflected and we brought this back to our statewide network, Families to the Max, and we spoke with families about ideas and solutions. And we really came with pre-planted ideas. We were really open to what people had to say. And from that, this idea of a family liaison really kind of grew from them kind of saying, you need someone potentially at the school who can help facilitate the resources, the ideas. And so we've just started this role this past year. We're really excited about it in our school teams. But it was something where it was coming and listening, bringing ideas back to families to help us problem solve and think through. So that was kind of an example. Yeah. And in terms of like the question about what hopeful or hope-centered relationships sound like and look like, one of the big things is multiple voices, and that it's not just one voice that you're hearing, but you're hearing lots of voices. And it's a dynamic discussion and it's ongoing, because when it's ongoing, people trust one another and it's showing that they're coming and they're getting something out of it and there's hope in it. When people stop coming, I think it's indicative that it's not a hope-centered relationship.
Excellent. Thank you. Yeah, it's giving me lots of food for thought. Definitely. All right. Another group.
I'd love to talk for our group. We talked about we're doing a lot of work in Maine with our grants, really trying to bring in that family voice. And so we've been working with the Maine Parent Federation here, and in our conversations with them, we talked about what does engagement look like for them. And they share that frequently it's communication. Things are shared with families. Here's the information, here's the website, here's what we're doing. And that's not engagement. And so we started talking about what engagement looked like. And then she shared that it's, well, you get invited to things. In our group, we even talked about that may look like you get to plan the Halloween party, or you get to do these pieces, but still not really, it's engagement, but not what we're looking for. So then we developed this idea that really we're looking for partnerships. So going from communication to engagement to a true partnership. And Sarah even brought up the idea of having them be a part of, if you're going to be spending money, having a parent at the table to have conversations about budgeting and really important pieces, not just superficial kind of activities. So in our grant, what we're trying to do is we're really starting with communication. We know we can't get to partnership in year one, but our goal is to expand that and to get to that area. But in our group, we also talked about having people do role playing, where they have to participate in activities with the perspective of a parent and think, and to be able to really see how complex everything is for families. And so thinking about that, and then Peg shared a story. Peg and I connected because Peg started her career as a student at the University of Maine Farmington. And so I thought it was a nice full circle, but she shared that she had a professor when she was there who said that thinking about hope, and that it's not that the student can't learn, it's that the teacher just hasn't figured out how to teach to that student yet and teach what they need. So Peg, correct me if I misquoted you there, but I just thought it was a nice full circle with Peg in my group as well.
You did a good job.
And I love so much of what I've heard goes back. So I think I shared with some of you at least that I spoke with one of the presenters from the parent participatory evaluation, which Tracy was actually before your time with this BDIG, but this is Minnesota, Minneapolis school district. And I said, one of the things we're challenged with is that the SPDIG is not the district, right? The SPDIG doesn't get to make all the decisions the district gets to make. We're the outside, you guys are the outsiders who are coming in and trying to support often. And, but some of the suggestions she gave me of how to have true engagement, how to work with families, I'm hearing from all of you. So this was the perfect conversation. We are right at time, but this is going to continue next month in a conversation about community engagement. And we're going to still talk a little bit about the family engagement piece, but also different groups in the community to connect with, to support children, support students who have disabilities. So thank you so much for engaging like you have today and being a true community. And Peg, we will miss you. We will think of you on your bike. Send us pictures and we will live vicariously.
All right. Take care and keep up the good work.
Everyone take care of yourselves.
Thank you.